today. From the Minnesota Department of Education, my name is Brad Haskamp, and I'm our Adult Secondary Credential and Education Policy Specialist.
And this is Astrid Leiden, the ABE Professional Development Specialist.
And Julie Dinkel, the Transition Specialist.
And I'm Jody Versa, the Program Quality Specialist.
On the line as well, we also have Sherry Eichinger and Alice Smith that are participating in today's session. So quick update, just an introduction. Remember to share ideas and questions throughout the webinar. We're more than welcome to hear your ideas and questions. Please just, you can type them into the webinar's chat function on there as part of the toolbar on the right-hand side. Or you can always click on your name in the attendee list to raise your hand, and then we can call on you during our various Q&A sessions, and we'll unmute you. Or you can always ask Carla if you have any other technical needs or technical assistance issues. Today we have quite a long list of topics. We're going to talk a little bit about Accuplacer Next Generation. We're going to talk about transitions, program quality standards, accountability, some PD and other things looking ahead. We're going to talk about future manager webinars, GED, high school equivalency testing stakeholder working group, and make sure we still have time for your questions. So before we get going, just wanted to note that one quick announcement. Unfortunately, Todd was not able to join us today, so we'll just be pinch hitting for him and his slides today, but we do have a couple of announcements. First off, we're very happy for Lori and very sad for all of us that Lori Rialp has now retired. She has been our grant specialist for years and years, and she has just done such an outstanding job as our grant specialist. We're really sad to see her go, but we are happy to see that Tim Larson will be taking his place. So all of you who are fiscal agents received a notification from Lori about Tim's role and what Tim will be helping us with as our new grant specialist for many of our grant needs. He won't be doing everything that Tim did though, so it'll be, or that Lori did as well. So if you have any questions about that, you can always let Todd or me know. And if you have any questions in reaching out to Tim, you can always talk to Todd or me as well. We also want to take a special moment. We haven't done this a lot before, but we want to welcome some new local ABE administrators. And so we're going to introduce them by their name, their role, and their consortium. And then if you want to know anything about them, you can chat with them, or they can chat anything else that they would like to know. And I'm sure we didn't get everyone on the list, so if you're new as well, you can, and we don't have your name on the list, you can feel free to introduce yourself in the chat function. First off, we have Tracy Krybon. She is our new ABE consortium manager for both Dakota Prairie ABE in Northfield and Lakeville. Yep. So it's great to see Tracy with us today. We also have Jason Sellers joining us today, who is our Burnsville ABE program consortium manager. Nola Spicer is the new ABE program manager in Southeast ABE under the Faribault site. We have Jessica Turner, who is the new consortium manager in Brainerd, and Jean Zender, who is our new consortium manager in South Suburban ABE in South St. Paul. Did I miss anybody? Meg?
Just sharing that St. Cloud has a new manager, Adam Holm.
Yep. And I don't think Adam is on today, but we definitely have been talking with him as well. We're very happy to see a lot of you as new managers. Welcome to the ABE field, and we look forward to working with you a lot more over the next couple months. Okay. At this point, we're going to turn it over to Julie and special guest Pao-Ku Yang from Minnesota State Colleges and Universities. Julie, do you want to kick us off with a couple of updates?
Sure. I wanted to mention that, as many of you know, the Accuplacer is changing. They're going from what is now being called the classic Accuplacer to the next generation Accuplacer. For those of you who are not familiar with Accuplacer, it's the assessment used for placement within the Minnesota State two-year college system. And there was a webinar already on Monday providing an overview of the next generation Accuplacer, and the link that's provided here will get you to that webinar if you weren't able to participate on Monday. And then in October on the 30th, there will be another Accuplacer webinar hosted by Deborah, and it will go more into the changes that you're going to see and somewhat the process that Minnesota State will be using to address those changes.
By the way, for anyone that's looking to download or access some of these links, you can always click on materials and download the slides, and then you'll be able to access all the links in today's presentation.
Yes, and I should also mention that the PowerPoint that Deborah used on Monday for the webinar is also in the resources as well. And now I'd like to just introduce Paku Yang, who is the System Director of P20 and College Readiness. Paku, I don't know if that's still your current title. I think it is, but she's here to give us a little bit of an update on multiple measures for course placement that are used at Minnesota State. So welcome, Paku.
Hi, Julie and Brad and everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you great.
Yep.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for inviting me to come and chat with you today. I did not prepare PowerPoint slides ahead because I really just wanted you to listen and then give the opportunity for you to ask as many questions as you want. And certainly either myself or Jessica Espinoza, we're happy to continue to have conversations with you offline or come back at another meeting or as many meetings as needed to make sure that we continue to stay connected with all of you. In terms of multiple measures for course placement, I wanted to just share a few things with you. The first is that you may or may not be aware that our system has been talking about moving towards implementing a multiple measures course placement system or program, and we've been engaged in these dialogues for the last couple of years. Where we haven't moved quite to it yet is that it is a big undertaking to take, and because there's so many decisions that needs to be made within it. And then it is the actual how are we going to implement this and making sure that we have the IT infrastructure to make it happen, but also that we have the business processes in place that allows it to happen. So if you are not familiar with multiple measures in the higher education landscape, especially in the course placement world, what it is that instead of using one assessment, in this case, for example, the Accuplacer scores, to place a student into courses, that we are using multiple assessments. And sometimes that could mean that you're using multiple single assessments or that you are compounding assessments together to ultimately make that decision of where the student is placed, whether it is college level courses or different developmental education courses. And so we have been having lots of conversations about what this system would look like and when we could implement it. Legislation then also was passed just this past 2017 that now requires the Minnesota State system to create a developmental education plan. And within this plan, one of the key things that we must include is a multiple measures program. I will share with you that this legislation came through our 2-year student association with support from our faculty associations and Minnesota State. And so we were supportive of this legislation when it went through, and we are actually very excited that we are putting together a developmental education strategic roadmap, and that roadmap actually will be finalized this fall, and we will be presenting it to the Board of Trustees later this fall or winter, and then submitting a legislative report no later than February of 2018. And so a huge component of this plan then is this multiple measures program that, like I said earlier, we've been talking about for the last couple of years, but now we have a 4-year period to make sure that we have it implemented as legislatively required no later than the 2020-2021 academic year. So what will this multiple measures program look like? That is yet to be determined. What I can tell you is that it will build off a number of things. So first is that we already are legislatively required, or the state is requiring us, Minnesota State, when we look at course placement, that we are looking at students' ACT scores, their SAT scores, and their Minnesota Comprehensive Assessment scores, and that the MCA and the SAT components of this was legislation that was passed in 2016. And so you may be aware of the fact that we are just rolling out the MCAs and the SATs this fall, but within this upcoming multiple measures system or program that we are developing, that those will be components of it. The other pieces that we will look at are non-cognitive assessments, whether these are, this comes in external assessment that we either purchase, whether it is assessments that we develop on our own, or maybe a combination. We also are looking at possibly including a high school grade point average, possibly including high school courses that students have taken, and grades in those courses. There's a lot of research on looking at high school records to help inform whether students, what the student's college readiness level is. We also have put an emphasis on finding assessments or measures that helps us to look at adult learners and English language learners. And so maybe looking at a high school GPA or high school course taking pattern isn't the best measures, and maybe they are, but maybe they're not the best measures for our adult students. And so we will be engaging in dialogue and research on what are some additional measures that can be used to best support our understanding of the college readiness of adult learners and English language learners. The last thing then is that, as Julie stated, the current Accuplacer tests are being sunsetted in December of 2018. And so we, as the system, then will be transitioning to the next generation Accuplacer test no later than January of 2019. And so in our multiple measures program, I anticipate that we will continue to use a course placement instrument and scores from those. And at this point, we are in a contract with the College Board with the Accuplacer, but 5 to 10 years from now, I anticipate that we will probably still have a course placement instrument as one of the measures that we are using. In just a second, I'll talk a little bit about our transition for the next gen Accuplacer, but before I get there, to wrap up what I can share with you right now about our multiple measures course placement program is, one, we are looking into what this program will look like. We will start putting together a development of what it may look like, do probably a few pilots at our campuses, gather more data, and then fully roll out what the MMP will look like. And then we will have a full transition period where we will support our campuses in moving towards implementing the MMP. And so right now, what I can share with you is that we're at the very early stages of developing this MMP. We intend to hold more conversations and gather more information about the various measures available, and then eventually we will have to, quite frankly, design what this thing will look like. There are components of it that will be system-wide, that all colleges and universities will have to implement, and then there may possibly be components that are campus level decisions. And so again, all of those different pieces will have to be thoughtfully considered and designed by the time that we have this ready. Again, legislation requires that we must have this in place by 2020, 2021, and so we just have a very short 4-year period here to have this in place. All right, so the last thing I will say, and then I'll pause for questions, comments from all of you, is that we are then going through a transition year this academic year to be prepared to implement the next generation Accuplacer test starting in January of 2019. We may have a few campuses that will do a soft launch starting in fall of 2018 for incoming students that are coming in spring of 19. And so you may be partnering with a college or university that will start to implement next-gen Accuplacer tests probably as early as October of 2018. And so I've been getting a few questions from folks about what is our implementation date. And so if you are partnering with a campus that is starting the soft launch, you may have been communicated that we are starting in fall of 18. But the entire system, all of our colleges and universities will have a hard launch of January of 2019. For the students who are coming in summer of 19 and fall of 19. So this year, we have a number of things that we must do. The first is that we will be setting new course placement scores to determine college level readiness. And so you may or may not be aware that Minnesota State has scheduled system course placement score setting meetings upcoming on Wednesday, October 11th. And we will be bringing faculty members from across the system in reading, writing, and mathematics together to look over the next generation Accuplacer test in their respective disciplines. And through a full day of engagement, they will have recommended scores that then will be reviewed through a process, and then ultimately a final decision will be recommended to our Vice Chancellor of Academic and Student Affairs, and we will set these new scores for the next generation Accuplacer test. After that, so the goal is that we would have those ready by November. And after that, then between November and February, then campuses will be engaged in dialogue on their individual campuses to set what their developmental level scores are, as well as any other either college level or above college level courses that require course placement score in reading, writing, or mathematics. Just a quick reminder that this does not impact ESL at this point. Accuplacer, the College Board, has not made changes to the ESL test, and so if they do in the future, then we will revisit the scores for ESL, but at this point, the ESL test right now is not system-wide either, because those are locally determined, but just a reminder that this does not impact ESL. All right, so those were all of my points that I wanted to share with all of you right now. As I've been chatting, as I've been talking, I have not been looking at the chat, and so I don't know what questions have come in, but I will pause here. Maybe Julie, if you want to, or Brad, one of you want to jump in and share some of the questions on the chat, or if folks just want to jump in and ask, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Absolutely. So if anyone wants to ask a question, again, this is a time where you can type in your chat question, or you can also raise your click on your name on the toolbar to raise your hand, and we can call on you and unmute you to ask your question verbally if you prefer. But we did get one question, Paku, and or a couple questions and comments. The first question is there any chance that TABE and or CASA scores, which are two of our ABE tests that we use here in Minnesota, any chance that those test scores would count as one of those multiple measures?
At this point, I would say all options are on the table. I think we will engage in some really good conversations about what are the multiple types of assessments that that helps us to see the college readiness of adult learners. And I think we're really open to looking at what are all the various assessments. Ultimately, we will have to make some decisions, but right now we are keeping all of the options open.
Excellent. We also have, thank you, Paku. We also have another comment in, and it says that Caroline says she's very encouraged that Minnesota State is thinking about what multiple measures look like for adult learners. She hopes that that would include ABE and discussions about what those measures would or could look like. Especially, she's bringing up the issue of GED with college-ready scores and college-ready plus credit scores. So, Paku, do you want to, would you mind talking a little bit more about ABE involvement in those discussions and or the inclusion or what you're currently doing with GED college-ready and college-ready plus credit scores?
Right, good, thank you. That's awesome. So we are, again, similar to the TABE and other types of assessments, we also are keeping our options open and looking at the GED scores. As you all probably know, GED last fall came out with recommendations for college-ready scores and also college credit scores. And so we already have been in conversations with GED testing services around those recommendations and how we may possibly include them within Minnesota State's course placement process. And so we will continue to talk with GED and talk through how the GED test scores could or could not be included. So just know that. In terms of the question around ABE, absolutely, we will be engaged in conversations with our ABE partners, I would say at different levels. And so certainly between systems, my office and the ABE MDE office will continue to have conversations. And then through the Assessment for Course Placement Committee, which is our system-wide committee that ultimately is putting together the multiple measures program system that is going to be recommended to the Vice Chancellor. They also will be engaged in dialogues with various stakeholders, including our ABE partners, our high school secondary partners, our workforce partners, our community-based. So we will, I think that how we will do it is yet to be determined, but it will be done in the next, I would say next year and a half here. And it may be the case that we will have some listening sessions or other opportunities to engage with folks. And so I would just say, please, stay engaged. We welcome your feedback. At this point, we may or may not form a working group around this, and so all of that is still up in the air on what is the actual way in which we will design this, but it may be the case that if we do form some sort of a working group that we may invite ABE partners to sit on the group. And so within the next year or a year and a half or so, you will hear more from us, but we absolutely want to hear from you, and we want to hear your best thinking around this, and we want to leverage your expertise and your experiences along with ours and along with our many other partners too, so that I think this is a really good time for us to step back and re-engage in a conversation about college readiness, and then also then really look at what are the various ways in which we can have students demonstrate their college readiness. Because ultimately, and I know you guys know this too, but ultimately we want students to be successful. And so we want to place them, whether it is the developmental level courses or the college level courses, we want to put them in the right place so that they can get the curriculum and the support that they need to meet their academic goals. And so I think we're both on the same page about this, and we will continue to engage with all of you.
All right.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Paku.
You're welcome. And again, please feel free to contact me. Julie on the slide gave you my phone number and email. And then if there are other opportunities where I can join your meeting, I'm happy to do so in the future. All right, thanks.
All right, thank you
so much.
Yeah.
It's great to have her. So I'm going to keep it over to you, Julie, to give us some more transitions updates.
All right, the Pathways to Prosperity grants. The grant opportunity has not been posted yet. There will be only one request for proposal, only one RFP with this round of funding, which is approximately $12 million. In the past, they have had a couple of RFPs. This time, there's only going to be one, so don't expect that they will do a follow-up one. They are now accepting feedback on a proposed model, and I have attached that, or it's attached in the resources if you want to look at that. There is sort of a new component called an on-ramp, but they are looking for feedback. They need turnaround. You would have to provide that feedback probably yet this week for them to consider it, I think, in the proposal. But that's just a heads up around Pathways to Prosperity. And then I want to inform people of Equity Works event that is coming up September 25th. It's Monday. This event is open to all people in workforce development. It's free of cost, and you can register at the link below. And Equity Works is a division, or they work out of the Humphrey Institute at the U of M. There's also a work-based learning conference. This should be a good conference. Again, it's free. It's next week, September 28th. They have a keynote there, free parking, free lunch. The registration link is below.
Thank you so much. So now we're going to talk a little bit about everyone's favorite topic of accountability and data. And you know what? You're not seeing deja vu. Yes, we still have not, the feds have not yet engaged us to negotiate performance targets for the 2017-2018 year. Personally, I think we have a couple of responses to that. One, we actually are not sure at this point if we will have performance targets for 2017-2018 at the state level. We just don't know if they're going to be ready to do that or not. If they are, we're assuming at this point they're going to wait till after our mid-October submission of all of our data for the last year, and so we might hear from them maybe sometime in November or December about targets for the current year that we're already in. So with that, we're just telling local programs to do your best job, work and provide the best education to your students, and we're going to go forward under that model and not obsess over what exactly our performance targets are at this point, but we know that we want to make sure our students are learning as much as possible and hopefully then succeeding in post-secondary and or employment after they leave our programs. Another accountability issue is that there has been a new test approved by the feds. This is the only test that is currently approved that we know of for the from our old test for the new NRS system with the new ABE levels, and that is TABE Forms 11 and 12. Minnesota is looking into them now at this point, and we will decide later this fall, between now and November probably, on whether or not we're going to approve those tests for our programs as well. We're anticipating that we probably will approve them, but we want to have some more discussions with local programs, find out a little bit more about the tests, and we also want to wait till the tests are actually available. Currently, the tests are not available by all ABE programs. The other great thing about the new TABE, Forms 11 and 12, those are currently aligned to the new CCRS standards. The other thing to know is we have a new data entry deadline. I feel like every time we come on, we have a new data entry deadline for you. So all July through September data from your local ABE program needs to be entered by November 1st. And the data that you want to make sure is entered and you want to check on, new students, are all your new students entered? Are all of your tests, pre and post tests, entered? Are all of your student contact hours entered? Are any diplomas earned entered into the database? And are any other NRS required information entered?
Brad, we have a couple of clarification questions about the assessment.
About the assessment?
First, looking for a little more information about when we would make the decision about approving TABE for Minnesota.
So I'm anticipating that will be before the end of November.
Okay.
I anticipate we'll have an announcement by the time of the SPARC meeting, or a SPARC conference, or Support Services Conference.
And what do we know or not know about new CASAS tests?
New CASAS tests, so what we believe thus far is that we do know that CASAS submitted at the same time as TABE. We also know that CASAS tried to add some additional information to their submission, and the feds rejected any additional information submitted after the deadline. So I think, unfortunately, CASAS got a bit of a delay. However, CASAS is not necessarily thinking that that's a terrible thing, because CASAS, as you know, has always aligned to both the ABE levels and the ESL levels. And one of the unfortunate things is that the feds still haven't revealed or unveiled the new ESL level descriptors and what those mean. So it's not the worst thing in the world that CASAS is still in the works, because hopefully they can still have their new tests aligned to not just the ABE levels, but to the ESL levels. So with CASAS, I think it's a stay tuned. They don't know whether or not they're going to hear anything soon, but I know that they've been trying to get more information from the feds and have still been waiting.
Teresa's wondering if she might be able to purchase the new TABE by the end of the calendar year.
We think so, but again, that's out of our control. We believe that that most programs could start purchasing them by the end of the fall once we have that approved. Like I said, we hope to make the announcement sometime around December 1st about the new TABE, but we don't know when Data Recognition Corp, or DRC, is going to make those tests commercially available. We were just actually looking earlier today, and we couldn't see that they were commercially available yet. But we believe they will be available very soon, because I can't imagine they want to hold out on selling those tests as quickly as possible. One other thing, I don't know if anyone's asked this yet, but in terms of transition, what does that mean for transition? Please take a look at the current assessment policy, but we do still have time with the old tests, so you don't have to switch them out immediately. You'll have at least a year before you have to switch them out. And we're still waiting for some additional clarification from the feds on that as well.
Thanks, Brad.
Okay. So again, your new data entry deadline is November 1 for all your July to September data. Please do not forget that. We will not have you to submit any reports this time or anything like that, but we will be doing another data poll at that point. So what this sets up, and you, all of you as administrators and local staff should really kind of keep this calendar and these data practices in mind. First off, you should be entering your data at least monthly. Student attendance data needs to be entered daily because we need to have a daily record of that for auditing purposes. Now, the regular cycle, when we're checking on that, October to April data, we're going to be reviewing that with your June 1 submission that you submit, with the tables that you submit via SERVs with your grant application. Annually, your May and June data then need to be reviewed. We'll be reviewing it around July 31st. You'll be emailing probably reports again in the future like you did this year to Sherry, some tables, and we'll be doing a data poll at that point again. And then all July through September data needs to be checked by November. We'll be checking it November 1st. You do not have to submit anything to us here at Minnesota Department of Education, but we will be doing a poll of the data. So that kind of sets up a regular cycle of when we're pulling data and the expectations we have on you as local programs. Any questions about that?
Not seeing any coming in, but please feel free to keep your questions coming through the chat.
Yep. And all of that is because of things that we have to submit to the feds. We have various timelines with the feds that we have to be pulling data and submitting data. So that's the reason for that annual, those checks and reviews. We still plan on submitting, publishing a state ABE report card sometime later this fall using your 2016-2017 program data. and that will likely include level completions, diploma, GED attainment, post-secondary entry, and employment outcomes. We're still doing the data match at this point, so we don't have that data yet available. But also please note, even though we do plan on submitting or publishing a report card, we will not be identifying a program improvement process or implementing a program improvement process this year based on your 16-17 results. We also will be doing some additional training on our new WIOA accountability measures. So 3 areas that you can look for this. 1, anyone going to the Support Services Conference on November 30th and December 1st, we will be doing some training there. We also will be posting sometime soon in the next month an announcement for a webinar for administrators on WIOA accountability measures and things that you need to know as administrators. We also will be doing some accountability data updates as part of our state update session at the by the Minnesota ABE office at our regional events in North and South. So those are 3 opportunities. You can take part in any of those coming up this fall. Okay, now let's talk about what's coming ahead. Jody.
Okay, thanks, Brad. So if you're really paying attention, you might have noticed that basically the same slide was in our last time we gave this web chat. So that kind of means that I'm working on this project of program quality standards, but it's still very much a project in the very beginning stages. And what kind of the vision or the idea is to have some program quality standards that are not, this is not content standards, so this isn't in addition to CCRS and North Star and those things that you're already working on integrating. This is more just an attempt to make an aspect of our accountability system that's a little bit more kind of bottom up and authentic, in addition to the things that we are required to do by the federal and state government. So kind of my very first step in this process is to start gathering just some information and some ideas and thoughts from those of you doing this work on the ground across the state. And I'm hoping to be able to do that this fall. My original vision was kind of in some webinars. That gets a little tricky to schedule. So I'm now kind of thinking of trying to gather some information in an online format that might look more like kind of a discussion board and I'm looking to gather information from folks in an online format, so it wouldn't require any travel, hopefully not a lot of extra time. But basically, I'm just interested in this point in knowing who might be willing to put an hour or 2 or several hours of your time in the next couple of months into kind of thinking and engaging on some questions about what program quality looks like in our programs. So if you're interested, I've already had a couple people reach out to me after the last web chat. If you're interested, shoot me an email.
So we do have a question about this. Allie asked, is this completely different from, or is this a revision to a previous matrix developed for program quality? And she wasn't sure if that was something published by maybe SPCLC or someone else. I'm not entirely sure what exactly you have in mind, Allie, but there are a set of program quality indicators that have been around for a couple of decades, maybe 10, 15, maybe more years, that at some point our office, before any of us were working in this office, was required to develop that as part of WIA, I believe. So those things exist, and if you remember the Pegasus process that used to happen, the Pegasus process was kind of grounded in those program quality indicators. So I am definitely looking at that as one aspect or one sort of piece of where these program quality standards might come from, but those are pretty old, and I definitely think they're not, there are some pretty big gaps in terms of kind of what those describe. So yeah, those are kind of part of the conversation, but not. Yeah. The other ones that were out there that I thought maybe Allie was referring, but it sounds like those were the ones she was referring. But anyone that participated in LEA the Leadership Excellence Academies, there were some program quality standards that were published or produced with those colleagues, with that cohort as well.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then Tom says that the FPCLC also developed their own set of standards, and he's happy to share those.
Excellent.
Yeah, I may or may not have seen those at some point, Tom, but yeah, I'd be happy to have those as part of this work. So, and I'm getting some messages from people that they're interested, so thank you. Okay, another reminder, something that's coming up this fall. So as hopefully most of you are aware of, ABE programs are required to submit a 5-year narrative every 5 years, and technically this is reauthorization for your program or for your consortium. We had a year off last year. No one had to submit narratives last year because of the federal competitive application.
Although I don't know if you can call the federal competitive application a year off per se, but
that's true. Good point, Brad. But we had a year off from the 5-year narrative, I guess, that's what I mean. So we are restarting the regular narrative submission schedule this year. So that means the list that you've got on the left, that's the next crew of programs and consortia that need to submit narratives. So if your program is on the list on the left, that means that one, your program manager and hopefully some other staff from your program need to plan to attend the Narrative Writers Workshop on the 9th of November. That will be here at the Minnesota Department of Education in Roseville. And you will then spend a significant amount of time over the winter and spring working on your narrative, which will be due in June of 2018. So if you work for one of the programs that's on that list, please be aware of that. The list on the right is the list of consortia that will have narratives due the following year, and I included that list just to let you know or to remind you that in June, when narratives are submitted, they are reviewed by peer reviewers. So the programs the consortia that are writing a narrative the following year are required to have staff participate in the narrative reviews. So if you work for a program or a consortia listed on the list on the right, be aware that you will need to have some of your staff participate in the narrative reviews, which will take place in June of 2018.
And we are announcing that date of June 21st.
June 21st. Yep, we got that on the calendar, got a room booked. That will also take place here at the Department of Ed. If anybody has questions about narrative writing, about the workshop, feel free to reach out to me.
Excellent. We did have a question about going back to program quality standards.
Okay.
Penny was asking if the standards that Tom volunteered to share could be sent to everybody. What we're going to say is, instead of sending an email out to everybody, what we'll do is, Jody, when you get them, just ask Tom if it's okay if LAN posts them to their website.
Yeah, along with the recording and materials from this webinar. So that's where you can find them.
And we do have a question about narratives. Will staff be reading narratives prior to that date?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm not sure quite what you're asking, Patty, but the typical process is, so anyone on the right-hand side, including Duluth, those consortia will be sent the narratives, either if they're electronic, they'll be sent the websites with some instructions and review forms, or they'll be sent the booklets. If we allow booklets or paper versions or hard copies, they'll be sent those all that notification probably on the 2nd or 3rd of June, and then you have basically 2 weeks or 2 to 3 weeks to actually review those narratives, and then come to that session on the 21st with the narratives reviewed and your individual review form filled out.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Patty, I see your question about just wanting to understand if it's following the same process as in the past, and yes, essentially we are following the same timeline. So this June 21st date is the in-person review session, and yes, the expectation is that staff will have read and reviewed the narratives before coming to that meeting. So they'll have a couple weeks in June to do that. And then we'll go back for just one second. I got another question that I think other people might be wondering. So the question is, will the narrative be similar to what we submitted for the federal application this past year? That is an excellent question. So one is, and I don't have like an easy, quick answer to that question, but what I can tell you is that part of what I'm doing this fall is working to revise the guidelines for what is required to be included in the narrative. And so what I'm working to do is include the essential pieces from the federal application along with the essential pieces of the former narrative, and that is a bit of a puzzle that I'm working to fit together. But yes, there will definitely be some pieces of what you submitted last year for the federal application that will be useful and that you can include, or at the very least use as a good starting point for certain parts of the narrative this year. Okay, I think that's it.
One other announcement looking ahead, any program that's looking to be either a new or expanding standard adult high school diploma program, we will be releasing an application late this fall to be due this winter. The training for new staff with current programs or new program staff or expanded sites will be May 10th and 11th of 2018 here at the Department of Education. All applications will be sent by Sherry out to the field and should be emailed back to Sherry. The applications will also be posted to our mnabe.org site. Also, just wanted quickly to remind, to let people know, Sherry sent an email out about an ABE and corrections discussion. It will be a webinar on October 23rd from 2 to 3:30, and it will be mostly open discussion, but we do actually have some questions as well that we need to submit as part of our federal narrative that we want to kind of gather from programs as well. So anyone participating in this or that wants to participate, look for Sherry's email that she sent almost 2 weeks ago, and we will probably send another reminder before the October 23rd date. And also bring any questions if you are participating. Bring your questions and comments of things that you'd like to discuss for anyone working with or in ABE programs in prisons or jails here in Minnesota. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Astrid to talk about professional development.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brad. So first, wanted to let people know that our statewide PD survey is coming this fall. The PD survey is one of the primary sources of data that we use to plan for professional development in the state. We use this data to inform the RFPs that we write for supplemental services. We use this to plan for statewide and regional activities, and then consortium managers have this data available for their own consortium that they can use for their individual consortium planning and for creating PD plans for their narrative and on an ongoing basis. So our statewide PD committee works to design the survey and analyze the results. We have gotten feedback that the survey in the past has been fairly time-consuming, and so we're making an attempt this year to significantly shorten that survey so that it's easier for you and your staff to complete. That will be launched earlier this year, and in order to get data in time for our supplemental service RFPs, and so that our narrative writers have access to that data earlier. So we plan to open the survey on November 7th. It will be open through the end of December, probably into early January. So we just want to let you know now that that's coming, and we want to thank you in advance for anything you can do to encourage your staff to participate. And if possible, find ways to support their participation. I know that some managers in the past have planned to take a half an hour of an existing staff meeting for everyone to do the survey together and then talk about the results. Others have given their staff an additional 15 minutes, half an hour of paid time so that they can complete that survey. So really appreciate anything you can do to support your staff's participation. And I want to assure you that we really do read these responses. We spend a lot of time looking at the data. The photograph behind this slide is actually a picture of our statewide PD committee spending an entire day parsing out all of the data. So some of the things that have come about in recent years from that survey, a lot of our work targeted at one-room schoolhouse practitioners, our Schoology group, webinars, workshops came out of that. We just did a series of workshops over the past year looking at how to develop lessons integrating both the CCRS and the TIF. And then some of the adult career pathway work that we launched just this year was in response to things that we saw in the survey. So thank you for taking the time to share your needs there, and we will do everything we can to respond to those.
So we do have a question about an estimate of how long we think this new, the revised, the shorter PD survey will take. And Karen is asking about this so she knows how to accommodate for staff or compensate for staff.
I can't give an exact time yet because we're still in the process of revising the survey and we haven't piloted it yet, but I think our goal is to definitely get it under 30 minutes, hopefully, possibly even shorter, depending on how many roles a person plays in the program. But I think 30 minutes would be a safe estimate for now. Make sure you have your calendars marked for our regional events. We've got 5 regionals planned throughout the year. Our state staff will be traveling to the regionals this fall. We'll be doing a state staff session at both North and South, and you'll see on your evaluation for this webinar if there are particular topics that you'd like us to be sure to cover. Make sure you get those in there and we'll respond to those needs. Other upcoming events to make sure that you have marked on your calendar. Next week, we have the Minnesota Literacy Volunteer Management Conference. This is a unique year because Minnesota is hosting the National Pro-Literacy Conference, and the Literacy Council is partnering with Pro-Literacy to offer the Volunteer Management Conference as a pre-conference next Wednesday to that Pro-Literacy Conference. I think there's been a little confusion in the field. Just want to make sure that everyone understands that this is the only volunteer management conference that will be offered this year. It has typically been offered later in the fall or early winter. It's earlier this year. And you can attend the volunteer management conference without attending the rest of the Pro-Literacy Conference. And the registration fee is the same as it's been in the past. Nominal fee of $40, a hotel covered for folks who are traveling more than 50 miles. So that is next week. If you're interested in attending, if you have staff who are interested in attending, make sure you get on and register now. Also, the Minnesota English Learner Education Conference, formerly known as Mini-TESOL, is coming up at the end of October. They also are offering travel scholarships for those who are traveling from Greater Minnesota, so something to check out. And the CTE Works Summit is in early November. That's the Career and Technical Education Conference, statewide conference. Then a couple of other events. You can find registration information on our ABE PD calendar on the Atlas website. Brad has referred to our Support Services Conference, our Spark Conference, that's coming up at the end of November. So we have Thursday, which will be an all-morning orientation ABE Foundation session for new support staff, for those who need a refresher. And the afternoon, we'll have assessment certification training on CASAS and TABE. And then Friday, general and concurrent sessions, including sessions on WIO accountability. Language and Literacy Institute is coming up at the end of January. That is always a very well-received event. And something new on the horizon for the spring that you can talk to your teachers about. Atlas is likely to partner with the Minnesota Council of Teachers of Mathematics and their conference, which is held annually in Duluth in early May. So keep an eye out in your ABE Connect newsletter for more information for that.
We have a question about scholarships. Pat Thomas is asking, are there any scholarships available for those attending the Pro-Literacy Conference?
I don't believe so. That would be something to contact Pro-Literacy about, but my recollection was that the Literacy Council did talk to Pro-Literacy about that, and it was not able to secure travel or to secure scholarships.
So you can get a travel scholarship for the Volunteer Management Conference, but not for Pro-Literacy.
But not, yeah, correct.
Okay. Perfect.
And Karen is clarifying, these are not through LAN. This is not sponsored by any of our Minnesota organizations. It's a national organization. Okay, and then I want to make sure that everyone is aware of a couple of cohort opportunities for professional development. Any program that is offering or is planning to offer a distance learning options to their learners really should consider going through a Distance Learning 101 training, and this is a year-long cohort that focuses on best practices in distance learning recruitment, screening, orientation, instruction, and assessment. There's going to be a kickoff event on October 9th, and then that's followed by a series of webinars and support in developing a distance learning plan for your program. So if you have not been through DL 101, or if you went through DL 101 years ago but have really changed the way you're thinking about distance learning at this point, valuable to go through it again. Those applications were officially due last Friday, but there are still a few slots left. So if you are interested, your program should get on and apply now in the next few days, or contact the distance learning team with any questions. And you've got the link there of the website where you can find more information. We're also still accepting applications for STAR, which is a professional development opportunity focused on providing evidence-based reading assessment and instruction to intermediate level ABE learners and advanced ESL students. This is a program-based professional development opportunity, so an administrator and at least one teacher would go through this. It involves a series of 4 face-to-face events, plus a variety of implementation activities and action planning back at your program. And I just want to make sure that everyone does realize that this is the final opportunity to participate in this training model of STAR. After this year, National STAR will be moving to more of a hybrid model where a lot of the training is delivered online and there are fewer face-to-face sessions. So we plan to shift to that model in FY20. So if you haven't gone through STAR yet, this would be a great year to get in on that before we have changes. For those of you who have new staff coming on board, Literacy Action Network offered a face-to-face pre-conference ABE Foundations workshop at Summer Institute. We recognize that not everyone can make it to that event, and so they are offering an opportunity for people to get some of the same training in an online format, and will be delivering ABE Foundations through a series of 4 webinars and associated activities back in programs. The first webinar will be focusing on an introduction to ABE students and systems. That's going to be held October 30th from 1:30 to 3. It will be recorded, and keep your eye out for the PD calendar for a link to register for that webinar. And then as the year goes on, 3 additional webinars will be scheduled so people can get the full range of topics for an introduction to ABE. And even if you did have folks who went through the face-to-face, that is a lot of information at once, and so if people would like a review, we would encourage them to take advantage of these webinars as well. Okay, we have a variety of professional developments this year focused on adult career pathways, and really excited about some of the new opportunities. One of the new things we kicked off this year at Summer Institute is a year-long cohort for program administrators focusing on adult career pathway program development. And we've got about 25 administrators going through that training, working in a variety of sectors. They're working together to collaborate in a variety of areas, looking at collaborations with workforce, building enrollments, working with employers, and they'll be coming together in May to showcase the ACP developments they've been able to undertake. We also have another cohort focused on instruction, looking at developing courses for adult career pathways. So we just kicked that off yesterday. We've got about 30 people going through that training, developing courses in a variety of areas. If you've not yet been onto the Atlas Adult Career Pathway resource library, and I would encourage you to do so. And the courses that are developed as part of this professional development will be posted on that website as well. So really excited about building the adult care pathway resources here available to Minnesota practitioners. And then a final option, we will be kicking off in January. There are still slots available for that. This is the Contextualized Career-Focused Basic Skills Instruction opportunity. This is based on the work that was done previously with LaGuardia Community College, looking at preparing instructors to integrate basic skills instruction with career-focused content. So participants in this cohort will work on developing units and associated lessons around a particular career focus. They will have an in-person kickoff workshop and final workshop with some individual coaching calls in between. So if you or any of your instructors are interested in participating, we strongly encourage folks to attend an informational webinar coming up on the 17th of October to make sure you fully understand the requirements and focus of that opportunity. And then applications are due November 17th.
So we have a couple questions. Is this a good time to take questions?
This is a great time, yeah.
Perfect. So one, just reiterating something that Tracy had asked, with this ACP PD professional development cohort, that will be, the plan is to repeat that again, repeat that cohort again next year, have a new cohort go through that process.
For the program development and the course design, yes, we do plan to repeat both of those next year. In addition, we are hoping that there will be some sort of continuing professional development around career pathways available to those who went through the cohort this year.
Excellent. And each of those requires individuals or teams?
Good question. So all three of these opportunities around career pathways are for individuals. We do have some programs that are sending multiple staff who are collaborating, but you would not need a team to participate in these.
Excellent. Okay, great. How about ACEs?
Okay, so on the previous graphic, you may have noticed that ACEs ran along the bottom as sort of the foundation for all of our career-focused work, integrating transitions-focused instruction into everything that we do in transition skills. We are bringing practitioners together a couple of times across the state here via webinar, so that we can share what people are doing in terms of integrating the TIF into their lessons, programs, their work with learners, and give people an opportunity to network with others around their questions and resources related to ACEs. So those will be Tuesday, November 28th and Tuesday, February 27th. You'll see announcements going out with registration information, and if you have either some requests of what you'd like to discuss on those webinars, or if you are interested in doing some sharing of what you've been doing in your program around ACEs, encourage you to contact Stephanie Summers, who is our ACEs lead, and her contact information is on the Atlas ACEs website. One final training opportunity I want to make sure people are aware of, we've offered this for several years now, through PANDA, is our Universal Design for Learning training. This is focused on supporting instructors in implementing instructional design, universal design for learning into their classroom and instruction. And so this is a virtual PD opportunity where a participant would review a recorded webinar during the month of January at their own convenience, do some implementation of UDL practices in their classroom and some reflection on that, and then come back together with the group via webinar in February to share what they implemented and what the results are. So if any of your instructors are interested in that, there's more information on the PANDA website, or they can email Wendy directly. And to wrap it up here, I want to share a couple of web resources, new web resources that are available. Last year, we had 14 programs go through our CCRS implementation cohort and did some excellent work aligning curriculum and instruction to the standards. And our CCRS, ELA, and math coaches, along with our CCRS team, have worked with the folks at Atlas to get some of those examples of CCRS-aligned resources up on the Atlas Content Standards webpage. We're really excited about this. You can go on now and see some sample CCRS-aligned lessons, evaluations of resources, student task studies, and workshop materials. So a place to go see what others are doing in terms of standards alignment. And we expect to be continuing to add to that. We've got another 12 programs going through the cohort this year, and we'll just be continuing to add to that resource for everyone in the field to benefit from. And then finally, Atlas has now added an ESL resource library to their many different resource libraries. That is still in the process of development, but there's already lots of great stuff on there. So make sure that your ESL instructors know about that resource and start checking it out. At this point, I'll just take any further questions about professional development shared or any other upcoming PD people have questions about.
Okay, we'll continue to take questions at the end of the session today. But before then, we want to talk a little bit more about high school equivalency testing. So first off, I'm going to launch a quick test. It's just 4 simple questions about GED and some of the features of GED. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on this test here soon, just in a second here. And what I'd like you to do is answer these. It's just a couple of quick questions and easy response questions. So let's just take a couple minutes here for you to kind of let us know how much you know or would like to know about various GED features. So the test is now launched. So you can complete the test, and we will see, we're hoping to get as many responses as possible so we can use that for future professional development efforts and for training needs. Once folks complete the test, we have a couple other things to talk about with GED and other reminders. Over half have currently submitted. Funny, so Meg just said that it said her responses were all wrong, and I'm pretty sure we said that all responses were supposed to be correct. So there is no wrong answer for any of those. Don't worry. I wanted to actually do it as a poll, but you can't actually set up in this system multiple questions under polls. So that's, so don't worry if it said that they were wrong. They're supposed to be checked that they were all correct. So I apologize. Let's wait another couple of seconds here. Addie, don't worry. All answers are correct, no matter what the test says.
Should we take a look at our results?
Yeah. close it out here. Okay, I'm going to close the test in 10 seconds. Finish up. A couple more responses quick. Okay, I'm going to close the test here now. So this was really a poll. It was labeled as a test, so you can see various pieces here. What?
Not showing up.
So you can see a little bit here. Really what we're trying to figure out is how well do people understand, or how much do people want to know about accommodations, GED Works, GED Manager, and GED Prep Connect. So we're going to be taking the answers to those tests and analyzing them as we go forward here. So thank you all very much for responding to this. This will help us as we go forward. But at this point, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to kind of walk through a couple of these key features within GED. So first off, I just wanted to know, I thought it was rather alarming that less than 45% of testers that have approved accommodations are actually utilizing those in accommodated testing in their testing situation. So I'm hoping that we can get that percentage higher and our overall number much higher. So I really encourage folks to go to gedtestingservice.com/accommodations to learn more about the accommodations process. I also plan on visiting the GED accommodations staff in their office sometime in the before the end of the year. We're planning a date for early December to go actually visit their office and bring some issues and questions. So if you have any issues that you'd like to share, that you'd like to bring with me to that site visit in early December, please send those to me via email. Any issues or questions that you'd like me to ask while I'm on that site visit. Going on, oh, we had a hand up. We'll take GED questions here in a little bit. But next about GED Works. So if you have any students who are working for either Walmart, KFC, Taco Bell, or Pizza Hut, it's important to know that those employers should be paying for their students or for their employees GED testing, and they can get additional advising support and assistance through their employer as part of the GED Works system. If you have any questions about GED Works or what that means, go to the website that's linked at the bottom of the screen, gedworks.com. The great thing I'll add just about Walmart in particular is it's not just the employees that get free testing, but their immediate family members. Spouses, children, and spouses and children, I think it's limited to, can also get free testing. So that is, they can take the GED test for free, and Walmart will pick up the tab. So I think that's a great resource that if we have any students working for any of those companies, we should try to get them enrolled or connected to GED Works through the GED.com system. Under GED Manager, we have 3 types of access that we have. Anyone in a regular non-corrections ABE program can get student authorized view. And that means you can see any student that's given access to your program. They can actually, you can see their testing, what they did, how they performed in GED Ready and GED Test themselves. Anyone that's working in an ABE program in the jail or the prison, they can get corrections level access. And what that means is you have everything that the student authorized view has, but in addition, you can do some additional things because students in corrections can actually access their own account. So you can actually do things more to simulate that student's account, and you have some additional authority in corrections connected to the students in your site. And finally, we have jurisdictional access, and that's limited to state ABE staff. And so there's just a handful of us that have that level of access. But those are the types of access that are granted. With student authorized view, though, it's important to know that that student actually has to opt, and they have multiple prompts throughout their account setting, not just upon setup, but throughout, to say, are you connected to an ABE or a GED prep program? And so they basically have to opt out according to GED testing service staff. And we're hearing from some programs that they're really struggling with that in terms of getting their students access. Others are saying they're having much better access. So what I wanted to do, either by clicking on your name to raise your hand and we can unmute you, or in the chat, just what are you doing to encourage your students to grant you permission to see their data in GED Manager? Also, what issues are you encountering? Please collect those in the chat and we can talk through those a little bit as well. Give you a couple seconds. You can continue to add your responses at this point, but I also wanted to point out that for those that have access to GED Manager, you then have access to GED Prep Connect, which means that you can actually, anyone can say that even if they're not currently associated with your program, they can actually voice interest and say, hey, I actually need some GED help for preparation. And then they're logged into GED Prep Connect. I've looked at many of our local programs and staff that are accessing GED Manager are not currently accessing their GED Prep Connect students, which means some of you have almost 100 students, potential students waiting there wanting to be contacted by you, but so far in the system it looks like you have not been contacting them. So to understand how GED Prep Connect works, please click on this link and go to Helpful Resources, and under that, Webinar Updates. And there's a webinar for you to actually understand how to get started with GED Prep Connect and what are some tips and tricks for GED Prep Connect. So you can start accessing those students that are saying they would like to join your program.
Caroline has a question that she thought all they had to do was select their site in order for them to see them.
That's correct. Yep.
That is.
They don't have to say, yes, I grant them permission, but they just have to say that they're associated with your site and select your site off of the list. Yep.
Okay.
Great question, Caroline.
And Dave comments that he wishes the sign-up would gather all information up front instead of initial sign-up and then again at testing time.
I'm not quite sure what that means.
Dave, do you want to chat in some clarification, or we can also unmute you?
I'm on the phone, so okay.
So Linda Keller's talking about what they do at Metro North. Astrid, can you read what Linda wrote about that?
Sure. So Metro North support staff or instructors are helping students complete this step to select their adult ed center, either during their orientation in the program or when they first begin classes and they create their GED.com account. Excellent. So it sounds like it's just a standardized part of their procedure. Penny has their students sign up for a GED account in their computer lab, and then have them select their program.
Laura said yes. I was talking about how they set them up at the setup. Excellent. Well, Dave, maybe we'll call on you when we get to the Q&A. We're almost to the Q&A session. So this, what you see on the screen now, that is an introduction to some information about GED Prep Connect if you're just getting started, if you're having some questions as you're initially using it. There is a follow-up that we're planning for Wednesday, October 11th, and there will be an email going out to anyone with GED Ready access or GED Manager access with Student Authorized View later today. And we're going to have an advanced user discussion with tips and questions on Wednesday, October 11th from 2 to 3 o'clock. What we're going to do at that point is we're going to talk about some of the new GED Manager updates that are happening on October 4th. We're going to give you some more advanced tips on GED Prep Connect, and we're going to discuss any questions that you have about GED Manager. The other thing to know is that we still have the GED testing subsidy up and running, $10 per test, so $40 discount in total, so that the total cost of the test would be as little as $80. And so to do that, you just need to make sure that tester needs to make sure that they select Minnesota as the location they're going to test. They test at a non-correction center, and they use the code MNGED10. I've had a couple questions over the past month of folks that had forgotten about the MN or had not heard about the MNGED10 code. So I'm reminding you about that aspect.
And Dave did offer some more clarification. He says when signing up for testing, a student does not show up in Registration Manager as eligible to test unless they have filled out an additional 4 pages of information that could have been gathered up front.
So I think that's a great issue to bring up, Dave, because since I only have jurisdictional access to GED manager, it sounds like this is actually more of a registration manager issue, not a GED manager issue. GED manager is for ABE programs. Registration manager are for GED testing centers to manage information that they can see. Those of you that are GED test proctors work in registration manager, and that is different. You do not have student authorized view with registration manager. You do not have the same ability to see private data in registration manager, and that is because GED testing service, their legal department is wanting a separation between those two types of access. And so I think that's an issue to bring. You can CC me an email on that question, and I will forward it to our GED testing center staff, and we can talk more about that, or I might ask you some follow-up about that before we forward it on, Dave. But that's a good clarification as well. There is a difference between GED manager and registration manager. ABE programs should have access to GED manager. GED test centers staff should have access to registration manager, and you should not have access to both. Except and if you do have access to both, let me know. Okay. In terms of legislation, we're reminding you that there are changes in state legislation that are currently being implemented and worked on, and that is that the term GED has been removed from state statute and replaced with commissioner-approved high school equivalency test or test. What this sets into motion is an official procurement process, like an RFP, a competitive RFP, or something along those lines. The timeline for this is probably a 1.5 to 2 year process. So we probably will not see this process complete until July 1 of 2019. What that means is if you check in your materials, we have 2 materials available for you, particularly about this. One is one of the first materials. The first one is ABE High School Equivalency Test Selection Stakeholder Working Group Application. We like to use short names here in ABE and Adult Basic Education. And I know we've had some comments that the first task of that group is to give themselves a snappier name, and that is entirely possible. The second thing that you'll note is in your references is the third resource, and that is Minnesota High School Equivalency Test Selection Process. The process document, the one that starts with MN, that actually walks through the 4-phase process that we need to implement now that this law has been passed. The application, the ABE application, is for a new ABE stakeholder group that we're putting together to help provide some recommendations for us as we go through this process. The stakeholder group will exist for the next 2 years and will help us recommend criteria and other factors that we should consider as we go through this competitive RFP process. And once we make the test selection, help us develop a transition plan. What should we keep in mind as we transition to either a new test or close out any current testing? And so that is one of the key things that we'll have to do as a stakeholder group. It'll be a very important stakeholder group. We'll get together 2 times a year, and then we'll have 2 webinars per year. So it'll be a total of 4 gatherings a year per year over the next 2 years. 2 in person, 2 online. So that is what we're looking at here. Anyone interested in taking part in the stakeholder group should submit an application. The application that's attached here, they are due by the end of the day Friday of this week. So please get your applications in now if you are interested. We're going to take some questions about that as well as everything else, but before we do that, I want to remind you about our upcoming web chat. The next one is Wednesday, January 10th of 2018, and then our last one of this school year is Wednesday, May 9th of 2018. So those are our 2 web chats for the first half of 2018. They'll be from 1 o'clock to 2:30. We do want to thank you for your participation today, and you will get a prompt for an evaluation for today's session, so don't forget to fill out that evaluation. And you'll also get to the materials for today attached with that you'll be able to access as well. The other place where you can access this recording, the slides, and all the other materials is on the Literacy Action Network website. So please go there for any additional materials, for the materials and everything that way. Now let's go to questions for the rest of our time. So we have one question from Penny. In GED Manager, when you're looking up student scores, when you switch from enrolled to interested, then you can see all the students that have shown interest in ABE classes. And then what Penny's doing is calling people on that list. That's outstanding. That is exactly how that is supposed to work. So I'm glad that you're doing that, Penny. Any other questions for us? Whether it be about GED, the high school equivalency test selection process or stakeholder group, or anything else that we've talked about today or haven't talked about today. Oh, Caroline's asking if we can clarify MSGs. So I'm assuming you're talking about measurable skill gain and not what we find in Chinese food, but measurable skill gain is actually part of what we're going to be talking about in our accountability sessions this fall at the Support Services Conference, at regionals, and in other accountability venues. Measurable skill gain can be accomplished through a variety of ways. One is through test level gains like we've always traditionally seen. In addition, there is a way where if you earn your secondary credential, your diploma or high school equivalency diploma through GED, you can also earn a measurable skill gain that way. In addition, you can earn a measurable skill gain by exiting an ABE program and enrolling in college the day after or someday after that. And it has to be able to be tracked. And we would do that via data match. In addition, there is a way where if you earn so many high school credits, Carnegie units, you can actually earn a measurable skill gain that way. It gets very detailed, and I have to admit, in terms of the Carnegie units, the high school credits, we're still looking for clarification on that one, and Todd's going to some training in October to help clarify what MSG exactly means in all the categories and how do we promote it. So that is one of the areas that we're really hoping to get more information out to you. Brent was asking with GED Manager, it'd be nice with GED Prep Connect if they would send emails. That was actually a national issue where they asked people around the nation and had stakeholders from various states and local programs. And they, by and large, said that because there are hundreds of students asking for or that are connected to GED Prep Connect, that and the program said it would be too overwhelming to get emails for every student. So I know, for example, yours, Brent, there are, I think in Metro East there are at least 80 to 100 students that are I think 80 students that might be interested in Metro East programs that haven't been, that according to Prep Connect haven't been contacted yet. Or at least not checked off in the system. But they said that locally GED says it has to be an all or nothing. Either we send emails to every program or we send emails to no one. The consensus they got from their stakeholder groups was do not send emails at all. They couldn't handle that influx of emails. And in part they were especially thinking about larger programs that might have hundreds, even more than that. And that could be, and that they just seem to be too many emails for the local programs.
Devin's wondering if they can connect potential GED students to the MLC hotline.
Unfortunately, at this point, they only connect directly to individual programs. They don't directly connect to the hotline. Those two don't connect yet. However, we have asked the MLC to do more connection with GED testing service to try to get that. So it doesn't look like that is going to be possible in the near future.
Going back to the measurable skill gain question, Caroline, looking for further clarification, says that she thought that Todd said that local programs didn't get credit for enrolling in college, for students enrolling in college.
Wait, do you mind asking that one more time? I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
I thought Todd said that local programs didn't get credit for enrolling in college. I assume she means students enrolling. and post-secondary.
This is a new WIOA measure that's not even fully implemented yet, and so that's why we're getting some training on what that exactly means. So yes, local program, like technically that will count in the future here as a measurable skill gain. The exiting your program one day and then going to post-secondary the next day. But it has to be data matched, so it has to be one of our colleges that we actually have a data match agreement with, in our, like in the Minnesota State college system, for example. If they go out of state, that doesn't count. And if they go to a college, like a private college or one that we don't, that is not part of the Minnesota State system, it doesn't currently count because we don't have those data agreements in place. In addition to that, though, I would put my qualifier to that is it's a little frustrating that what if you're helping them in college, or what if they like went to your program and then they enrolled in college and then they came back to your program for some additional tutoring, like technically you wouldn't get credit for that either. So it gets really complicated, and that's why we want to do some in-person data sessions or in-person accountability sessions and some webinars really focusing on this issue of measurable skill gain, but we don't have a lot of in-depth information via webinar or via slide today. But look for that later this fall, because it gets rather complicated, Caroline, absolutely.
Another GED question. Amy notes that Greater Minnesota programs regularly share students, and says that students used to be able to select more than one site. Could this be restored? Yeah, at this point, GED testing service says they cannot open that up to more. We brought this up to them as well, saying, can't we open that up so that students can select more than one site? I mean, it's not even in Greater Minnesota, it's in the metro. All over the state.
Yeah, and it's around the nation. But GED testing service at this point, it's got caught up somewhere in between their legal and their technical logistics, where they are no longer able to offer that. But we are still pushing for that when we connect with as we connect with GED, and I know other states are pushing for this as well.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Okay. Well, at this point, let's stop the recording.